Hello and welcome back to my podcast. Today we're going to talk about why you might have constipation for a few days and then suddenly get a bout of diarrhea, and it might alternate from diarrhea to constipation. We're going to talk about why that happens and what you can do about it. So, when it comes to our digestive issues, it's important, first of all, if you've got prolonged issues, to have a word with the GP and make sure that you rule out any persisting underlying problems. If you've been told you've got IBS is just a collection of symptoms. It isn't actually a disease. It's just a collection of symptoms where disease has been ruled out. So it is always useful to get checked out to make sure there's nothing more serious that needs more medical attention. But sometimes I do see this a lot with clients who experience possibly this pattern of, it might be that you have slow bowel movements or sluggish bowel movements for quite a few days, and then suddenly a bout of diarrhea for a day or so, which doesn't seem to relate to anything you've eaten. You might just eat it normally. I also find sometimes I have clients whose digestion seems okay altogether, so they don't have the constipation piece. They sort of, everything's fine, and then suddenly they might get a flare up of symptoms. So we'll talk about what's behind that. So first of all, if you're somebody that experiences constipation for a few days and then diarrhea, that can sometimes be, it's not always, but that can sometimes be something called overspill or overflow. And what that is that if the stool has become a little bit too hard, a little bit compacted, and everything's a little bit sluggish and not moving along very well, the clever bowel decides that, well, we've got to do something about this. And so what it does is it draws in extra water into that area, and it makes the stool very watery to try and move it along. So what will happen is that your stools will suddenly become very loose. Sometimes what happens is that goes around the compacted stool in the digestive tract. It will just come out around it. Other times it might move it all along. So it's actually a clever mechanism of the body. But what it does mean is that the stools are inconsistent, and that's the main problem. So its motility is too slow. And in a moment, I'll talk about how we can get that more consistent. The root cause of that is that the stools are too slow and sluggish, and it's had to take drastic action to make an improvement. Sometimes it could be that you have experienced something that has triggered a problem. So it might be that you are a little bit sensitive to some kind of food or drink, or maybe an external stress, anxiety, something like that can, as you probably all experience, sometimes that nervousness that we might get in our tummies, that sort of butterflies feeling. And that's because there's so many nerves in the gut. So our gut and our brain are always messaging each other and communicating. So that sometimes when we think a thought about something that's worrying us and we start to feel those feelings of stress and worry and anxiety, the body then sends all the stress hormones around the body, and that can actually make the motility, the movement of the bowels, really go fast and make us need to rush to the loo. So it's also worth thinking about your nervous system in that respect and see if that could be part of the problem. So what can we do about this issue? Well, first of all, let's try and get the motility normal. Everybody, every day, should produce an easy to produce sausage, a satisfying sausage, which basically means that once or a couple of times a day, we produce a sausage shaped stool quite easily, quite easy to wipe afterwards. And that's a nice, healthy stool on the Bristol stool chart. If stools are a little bit more rounded, more like rabbit droppings, and a bit slower or harder to pass, or we don't pass a stool every day and it might be every other day or every few days, then that's more on the constipation side, on the more sluggish side. So there's a few different approaches we can take. Now, we can add more fiber, and that for some people is all you need to do. But sometimes adding fiber to the mix just makes it even worse. So it's not always the root cause. But starting off with fiber is a good experiment. So you could just add a little bit of gentle fiber. My favorite for this sort of thing is nuts and seeds, because they have a nice combination of fiber and fats, because we do need fats to get things moving along. So if you can add like a tablespoon of seeds to breakfast or a smoothie, a handful of nuts, something like that, that can be really helpful. And just think about your fruit and vegetable intake as well. Don't go crazy, don't go from zero to loads, but just a gradual increase in your fiber from fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, and see if that can help things along. The other thing that's really important if you are increasing your fiber is to make sure that you've got plenty of liquid on board. You're hydrated, because if we have the fiber without the liquid, things can get really stuck, and we can make things even worse. We can get bloating and slow everything down. So do stay hydrated. And as I said a little bit earlier as well, we do need a little bit of fat in the diet. So if the diet's very low in fat, that can slow things down. So have a think about whether you've got your healthy fats in the diet. Healthy fats come from lots of different foods. They're naturally present in meat and fish, and oily fish is particularly good. It's, of course, in butter and cheese and yogurt, as long as it's not a fat-free variety. It's in nuts and seeds and avocados, olives, olive oil. I don't recommend vegetable oil fats, so I don't recommend sunflower oil or rapeseed oil. Or something that's called vegetable oil. Those are not very helpful, and they're quite inflammatory. So make sure you've got plenty of fats in the diet to help things move along. Other things that can be really helpful for motility, so moving things around the nervous system, can be ginger. So ginger in your food or ginger in a tea. And also making sure that you've got the right minerals, you've got plenty of minerals in the body, because actually, if we haven't got the right level of minerals, that can slow things down. And some people do well by taking an electrolyte sachet, not a rehydration sachet, that's different. An electrolyte product, might not be a sachet, it might come in a bottle. Electrolyte products have got a nice balance of sodium, potassium, magnesium, some of these really essential minerals that can really help with the gut motility and hydration, amongst other things. So those are things that might be helpful for you to get things moving along. However, it might not be that, it might be a food sensitivity. So if you think that a type of food might be a problem, it might be worth keeping a little bit of a diary, a little bit of a journal, and like a mood, food, and symptom journal to see if you can spot any patterns. Quite often, though, people can't spot a pattern, and that's when it might be more related to the motility going through the stools going through the body, or to do with the nervous system. And actually, talking of the nervous system, when we are in an anxious mode, we can find that our stools are much looser and we're much more likely to have diarrhea. But on the other hand, prolonged stress can actually end up slowing things down. So it is worth thinking if that is something that you're experiencing. In fact, prolonged stress can affect the thyroid. And even if you haven't had prolonged stress, an underfunctioning thyroid can cause constipation and sluggish bowels. So if that sounds like something that resonates with you, it might be worth getting your thyroid checked. The only problem is with getting the thyroid checked is that usually the doctor will just check something called TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone, which is like the master gland of thyroid hormone. But that isn't enough to tell you whether your thyroid is converting the hormones correctly and whether you're getting enough of the active levels. So it might be that you get the data from your doctor first on the TSH, but don't just be satisfied with a yes, you're fine. Make sure you get the actual data, and then you can look it up and see where it falls in that sort of level. The NHS reference ranges are extremely broad, so that's why often people are told that they've got normal levels of things when they haven't. Or you can take your results to a practitioner if you're working with somebody like myself. You can also get a private test done, which is more comprehensive. So you'll have active levels of T3, T4, and maybe even looking at antibodies. So getting a more comprehensive thyroid test, if that sounds like something that resonates with you, could be part of the picture of your stools and why your motility might be a little bit sluggish. And making sure that you've got all the nutrients you need for your thyroid, because if you are, even if you have got no thyroid problems, your thyroid really does need iron and iodine and selenium to function well. So some of my clients, we just make sure that those nutrients are optimal, and that really helps to support the thyroid, and that can in itself can support your digestion. So let's do a bit of a recap. So if you're somebody one day's constipated, the next day has got diarrhea, it is possible that it might be overflow. I do suggest that you go and speak to your doctor and get a diagnosis. But if that's the case, then just start by experimenting with a little bit of fiber, a little bit of water. If the fiber and water don't help, you could consider a supplement, something like psyllium husk. But again, you'll need plenty of water to go with that. But if that doesn't really help, then it might be that we need to explore other things. There could be some other imbalance. There could be some gut bacteria imbalance, and it kind of might need a little bit more exploring. With my clients, if we've hit a bit of a wall and we have tried things, we've tried a little bit of food change, we've tried some supplements, and we've tried, reviewing what's going on, and if things aren't working properly, what we might do is a functional stool test, so a comprehensive stool analysis. And a comprehensive stool analysis is different to the stool test that your GP will do. So your GP stool test will be looking for specific things. It might be that they're looking for blood in the stool. It might be that they're looking for a marker of inflammation, or they might be looking for parasites, and usually there's about 3 parasites that they test for. A comprehensive stool analysis has a lot more information. So one thing that sets it apart is that it profiles all the bacteria that's there. It profiles them against healthy cohorts, so you can see your ratios of your healthy bacteria and whether they're optimal, or even if you've got any bacteria that shouldn't be at that range, or maybe even some pathogenic bacteria or yeasts. We also get an impression of pancreatic enzyme function. So it might be that your enzymes need supporting. There might be indication of your immune markers to see if there's something that possibly you're fighting off. So we can get quite a lot of information from those. So that's something I quite often do with my clients if we hit a bit of a wall with our nutrition, and we've tried lots of different things to support digestive issues or IBS. And last of all, don't forget the nervous system part, because that can really play a part in your symptoms. It can cause loose stools, it can cause constipation, and also a lot of anxiety around your bowel movements. So if you're interested in the hypnosis side of supporting your digestion, on my YouTube channel, you will find a playlist called Gut-Directed Hypnotherapy. So there's some free tasters there. So you might like to have a listen and see if that's something that you like the sound of, because gut-directed hypnotherapy is a really nice kind of tool in the toolbox to really support digestion as a whole, because that nervous system piece is really important. I hope you found that helpful. If you did, please like and share and subscribe. And also do feel free to let me know in the comments any questions or anything that you found particularly helpful, or any subjects that you would like me to talk about further in this podcast. I really appreciate you being here. Thank you, and I'll see you again next time.